Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
Afre, my name is Kiona Rivera, student at the University of Guam and recent recipient of the G is for Giving Scholarship. This holiday season, I'm encouraging our island community to support the G is for Giving campaign. Your generous contribution not only supports programs at the university, but also helps students like me reach our academic goals. For more information on how you can help shape the future leaders of our island, call the UOG Endowment Foundation at 671-735-2957 or visit their website at give.uog.edu.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. What a great way to start a radio program. Starting out with the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution. You know, if I start out with the Second Amendment, which is dealing with the right to keep and bear arms, you know for sure that I'm a straight shooter. How about the... There we go. All right. So let's go from there straight to Zemi Ikadni. We got 2 more hours for corny jokes, right, Jose?
They're never ending.
Yeah. Zemi Ikadni. So we start out here with the Daily News. Our view, GovGuam must do more to incentivize affordable housing. We got to get the government into everything that we do. Maybe if the government had an agency that built all the houses, they'd be more affordable. What do you think, Jose? The government can always do things better, faster, and cheaper. Where's that horn? Yeah. A key part of the American dream is owning a home, which helps people build equity, increase credit, and decrease housing costs. Unfortunately, on Guam, the dream of home ownership is becoming out of reach for more and more families. For many, the cost of finding a nice, safe place to live has become unaffordable. The average price for a single-family dwelling has increased about 65% over the past 7 years. Siska Hutapea, president of Cornerstone Valuation, said in April, the 2020 single-family dwelling price is at $333,500. That's a lot. $333,000. According to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, median income on Guam for households is about $65,000 a year. Based on the Demographia International Housing Affordable Index, the median household income compared to the median price for a home falls to the severely unaffordable rating. That's why it was good news that 16 families were approved for the first-time homeowners assistance program administered by the Guam Housing Corporation. The program assists eligible individuals in purchasing their first home with the cost of closing expenses and associated fees. Qualifying individuals get 4% of the total purchase of or construction price of the home, not to exceed the eligible transaction amount of $375. I don't quite understand what that sentence means. Does that mean the government will give you 4% of the total purchase price? Recipients receive certificates of recognition from Governor Leon Guerrero and the Lieutenant Governor. As housing costs increase, it has become more of a challenge for our families to realize their dreams of home ownership. Our administration is deeply honored that Guam Housing Corporation has worked hard at closing this gap for our island families, Leon Guerrero said in a news release from the governor's office. 16 people, that's really great progress. It's great that these families were able to take advantage of this program. There needs to be a stronger effort to let people know about the existing government programs for housing. And the administration needs to work with the Guam legislature. Now you have to put Guam in there, right? You couldn't just say the legislature, because then we might think it's the California legislature, right?
Well, some people don't think that Guam has a legislature.
After yesterday's performance, I'm inclined to agree. And the administration needs to work with the legislature to find ways to give developers incentives to build more affordable housing so that more families can make their dreams come true. All right, so that's the daily news. No blue stars today, folks.
Perhaps the governor can talk to some lending institutions. She might know somebody.
Somebody that has influence on a company that lends money.
Mm-hmm.
That
I've heard.
Yeah, that would issue mortgages to secure loans. Yeah, it might be. Okay, then we've got the Post. Repeated funding shortfall will get in the way of our school children's chances of succeeding. At a legislative oversight hearing on Wednesday, the Department of Education's budget shortfall for the rest of this year was discussed. The local government funded budget for this fiscal year is $206 million, according to what was discussed at the hearing. That might sound like a huge amount of money, but for DOE, which carries enormous payroll and other fixed costs such as school leases, power and water, retiree health costs, and contractual services, that amount pales in comparison to the department's needs. DOE needs to get an annual financial help from the Department of Education, but it looks like GDOE will still need to scrape through to get through the rest of the budget year's 9 remaining months. DOE's approved budget, Superintendent John Fernandez said, basically leaves $20 million left to fund the rest of this operation. Utilities itself takes up the majority of that, and so you're left trying to fund utilities and some other key contracts, food contracts, custodial contracts. The reality is GDOE's costs are enormous, and not all of its expenses can be justified for the federal government to pick up the tab. Let's compare DOE's $206 million locally appropriated budget this year and the reality of what it actually spent last budget year when schools were mostly closed for in-person learning. Here's a breakdown of DOE's fiscal 2020 expenses using local funds. Salaries and wages, $131 million. Who do they think they are, the hospital? Benefits, $45 million. Lease payments, including Tizon High, Okado, John F. Kennedy, $25.3 million. Food management contract, $3.5 million. Contractual services, $10.5 million. Supplies, $891,000. Retiree health care benefits, $10.8 million. Power, $10.7 million. Yeah, that's because they don't listen to Clint Rigel. If they had those solar collectors on the roofs, it would read power zero. In fact, power would be a minus because we'd be selling money back to the power authority. I mean, selling power back to GPA, right? Yeah, right. Water, $3 million. Textbooks, $981,000. Travel, $207,000, 560.
It happened way before March 20th, then. What did they need to travel for?
Yeah, right. You couldn't go anywhere anyhow, right? Phone, $344,000. Library books, $246,000. fuel 96,000, capital outlay 95, miscellaneous 409. All these add up to a grand total of $244 million in locally funded spending by GDOE. Guam DOE runs 41 schools and has more than 4,000 employees, of whom 700 plus were federally funded last year. Federal grants, mostly from DOE, a U.S. DOE, provided $75 million worth of financial breathing room last year, and part of that money, just above $30 million, helped GDOE with payroll and benefits for the federally funded positions. With all of DOE's major expenses, part of the issue is there is little left for important items like textbooks. Textbook spending using local funding was less than $1 million in the previous budget year, and the capital outlay was well below $100,000. With that puny budget for capital outlay, it pretty much means schools are not getting new facilities anytime soon. It will be hard for DOE to keep up with meeting all of its mandates when there is very little left after payroll, health insurance, power, water, and rent. Just like a household, something will have to give. And elected officials cannot realistically expect Guam DOE to meet all of its mandates when there's not enough money to execute them. Now, I got to stop here and tell you that Public Law 2845, also known as the Adequate Education Act, or the Our Every Child Act, says that the legislature will properly fund an adequate public education for everybody K through 12. But I don't ever see a director of education coming along, banging on the table, waving that public law around. Instead, what I usually see is, well, we know the government's short on money, so we want to work with you on the budget. No! That's not your job. Every year, Guam DOE makes a plea for a realistic budget, and each year it gets shorted, even when elected officials claim the education of our school children is their priority. Politicians who keep failing to deliver their promises should change their tune, and voters who keep getting dismayed should change their choices on the ballot. There is a term for this, when we vote for the same elected officials over and over again and somehow expect better outcomes. Very, very true. And we keep going through the same exercise. Okay, so much for Timmy and Cudney.
Well, maybe you can clarify this. I understand Teton is being leased out by from a private enterprise, but I thought John F. Kennedy and Okadu were Gov Guam buildings.
Well, they've entered into some what would you call it? Build, lease.
The construction companies are leasing them.
Yeah, it's actually some nonprofit corporations that actually build the buildings, pay for the buildings, and the government rents them from those companies for the next 30 years, at which time they become government property. In fact, it's build and maintain even. But we saw this as a pretty good way of going about it. Okay, next on the card, I've got Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. And I've talked about it every day, how the great red rice controversy of 2021 is really a paradigm for what we're going through with both on the island and in the country, where there are facts and truths, and there are agendas and narratives. And when the facts and the truth don't match up to the narrative, one way or another, people are forced to go with the narrative in disregard of the facts. And that's why we think that two men can get married, one of whom can become pregnant, that killing a child in the womb is not murder, all of these other things, because the the narrative calls for it. So things that jump out and grab you by the eyeballs, and you say, I've known all my life way this works, and what they're saying is wrong, and you get canceled.
What's interesting is if when you say that stuff, the vitriol for even mentioning an alternative narrative
Absolutely.
is incredible.
Extreme anger, yeah. So that's where we are. And when Paul said, you know, what you guys call what people call red rice really is orange, we saw an example of that. Therese Padua Hart came back and said, well, you know, got some people to say it's part of our culture, it's tradition, leave it alone. We don't want these people coming in from outside and telling us this stuff. Classic example of how it works even down on that lower end of the scale. So have we loosed another epidemic here, a pandemic on ourselves called agenda versus the truth, where the agenda and the narrative snuff out the truth, just like this virus living inside your body.
Well, we talked about this a couple weeks ago where there was an article that said, get ready to forget Waukesha, because that's a place where the narrative doesn't fit reality.
Exactly.
We heard about what happened where that gentleman, I can't remember his name, because it has been talked about recently, drove his vehicle through a parade intentionally. There's reports that he zigzagged, and before that, you could even say it was premeditated, because on his social media, he was talking about mowing down white people.
Yeah, this gentleman of color, which is you know, the politically correct term, the gentleman of color had posted stuff on Facebook about how much he hated white people. He gets in his car. There's a parade in one of the streets in Waukesha. This guy comes tearing through there, probably 30 miles an hour, killed, 9 people?
Including children. Yep.
Including children, and killed 20 or 30, injured 20 or 30 more. A couple days in the newspaper and it was gone.
Not even any mentions anymore.
No.
In fact, it's amazing how there were so many people down there in Kenosha, as far as media goes, for so long. Yet the people in Waukesha said there's nobody talking to us anymore.
Yeah.
As if it never happened.
Yeah, and that's because the perp was black and the victims were white. If it had been reversed, it would be, every commentator in the country would be writing columns about it.
If the reality doesn't fit the narrative, we're not going to hear about it anymore.
Absolutely. The reality must disappear. So that's why I thought Paul Zerzan really touched off something that was very, very instructive, because if you can understand it down there on the color of rice level, then it becomes very easy to understand on these other levels. And that's why I labeled this item on the card, Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. Because the folks over there on the left, the CRT folks would blame everything that happens in this country is a function of racism and white supremacy. So if you aren't looking at the world through glasses that can detect racism, you aren't really seeing what's going on. Systemic racism, brought to us by Paul Zerzan. So I'm going to have some drills here from time to time to see if you can pick out the reality and the narrative. Now, you folks out there on Facebook, I'm going to hold up a piece of paper, and I've got 2 words on the piece of paper, word number 1 and word number 2. Here it is. Okay, now, who is able to tell me the color of word number 1? See if you can post the color of word number 1 on Facebook. This is exactly what we're talking about here. Word number 1. And a little later on, I'll explain to our international radio listening audience that doesn't have Facebook what's going on here. Now, Pat Saho says that word number 1 is blue. David Dinsman says that word number 1 is blue. William Johnny Utah says it's orange. He catches on. And let's see, Ron Van Gunyon says it's blue. So here it is, the first word. And I'll let a couple more people post, and then I'll kind of explain the drill here. Anyhow, that's the reason that I keep Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism on the calendar, because I think it's a point well worth mentioning that we have to be on guard all the time for the narrative replacing the actual truth and the facts. Okay, so I'm done with that item on the card. I'm going to come back to the test here in a minute, and I'm going to deviate from the calendar because an old friend here, a Marine, Andrew Zawolinsky, also known as Andrew Jawolinsky, wants to talk about the former Siemens Club across from the PD power plant. I think maybe he wants to talk about I guess it did become the Siemens. No, wait a minute. Let me just talk to. Go ahead, Andrew.
Hi, yeah, thank you for taking my call. It was the old USO.
Yeah.
And then the Siemens Club took it over.
That's right, yeah.
And I'll tell you what, it was one of the finest places to go with your family or children and stuff, because their food was par excellence.
I used to go there. I used to go there for lunch a lot, and they had an outstanding bowl of chili. I remember that.
Yeah, and their SOS was really good too. But I'm saying, it was reasonable, and you can bring your wife or girlfriend or whoever, and they're not going to get grossed out because they kept their standards rather high. And Florian and I, about once a week or so, we'd travel out there just for the food, and the service was great. And they had a library in that place, and outside of the place, they also had like these covered, where you could, barbecue outside and stay out of the rain. And they had a swimming hole there too that was usually guarded by a lifeguard or two. So I didn't know if you remembered that or not, but
yeah, I do.
I'd love to see something done with that, bring it back to the status that it was. Because right now, as I understand, it's just rotting away, and So anyway, thank you for letting me air that out. I appreciate it, and God bless. Take care, and Merry Christmas and best to Oxon.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you too, Andrew. Good talking to you again.
All right, sir.
So long. Okay, we'll take a short break, and I will translate SOS from USMC into English.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
The holidays are here, and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visit guam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Leafs, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, 3 payments calculated, 5% APR, 60 months term, and based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so here we are. SOS, translated from Marine Corps into English, chip beef on toast. So you take some toast and some white gravy with chunks of beef in it, put it on the toast, and that is called SOS.
I kind of like it. It's
Yeah.
like dried out corned beef, but not so dried out in the gravy.
Yeah, so it's pretty good. Now, why would you call it SOS? Well, SOS is the international symbol for distress, right? And when you get too much chip beef on toast in the mess hall, it's a symbol. It is distressful. So the SOS translates into, I'm going to have to be careful on the first letter, something on a shingle. Use your imagination and see if you can come up with a better term. Yeah, there you go. Let's try that again. On a shingle. Yeah, okay. Okay, now, with respect to the test here, I'm holding it up again. Word number 1. Can you read word number 1, Jose?
The word is green.
Yeah, okay. And word number 2?
The word is blue.
Okay. Now, what color is word number 1?
The color is blue.
You almost said orange, right? And the color of number 2?
Would be green.
Yeah, so this is an example of what we're talking about. The narrative and the facts. The narrative here, word number 1, oh, it's green. I just saw it. I just read it, right? I just saw it in the paper. But when actuality, it's blue. Okay, so much for Paul Zerzan and systemic racism. Next, we go on to learned helplessness versus the GOP, the Grand Old Party. And this is an article from the Post. Latest attempt to clip the governor's emergency power falls short of votes. Some of Guam's senators' latest attempt to override the veto on Bill 11 once again fell short by a couple of votes. Bill 11 would remove the governor's ability to extend an emergency declaration and instead grant that authority to the legislature.
That's wrong.
And it's part of the statutory scheme that says a majority of the legislature can end those emergencies. However, there's nothing in Bill 11 that would prevent the governor from making a new declaration. With past override attempts having failed, the Guam Daily Post asked the bill's main sponsor, Senator Chris Duenas, on Tuesday, if he believed he had enough votes this time to proceed. The senator said he wasn't sure, but he would still seek an override out of principle, and noted that there has been a lot of public support for the measure. Bill 11 passed narrowly in February before it was vetoed by the governor, who was concerned that it would slow her emergency response and take away some of her magical powers. Yeah. An override was attempted at the end of May, but that failed by 3 votes. Another attempt in August failed by 2 votes. Wednesday's override attempt resulted in 8 favorable votes, short of the 10 needed to pass. Tony Atta, Frank Blas, Joanne Brown, Duenas, James Moylan, Nelson, Taitigui, and Speaker Therese Terlahi voted in favor of the override. So all of the, not all of the Democrats except Mary Torres and the Speaker voted for the override. And Clinton Rigel, Joe San Augustine, Amanda Shelton, Mary Torres voted against limiting the governor's emergency authority. Now, here's the part, that even if I were going to vote for Sabina Paris, this would be enough for me to say, I ain't ever going to vote for her. Here's Sabina Paris. Sabina passed from making a decision 3 times, and her action counted as a vote against the override. So Sabina, when her name was called, Sabina Paris. Pass. Go through the roll call again. Sabina Paris. Pass. Wait a few minutes, one more time. Sabina Paris. Pass. Standing rules say three passes is a no vote. Everybody knows that. So what do you prove? I think I'll proceed on this basis. Every time somebody pulls this trick, I'm going to brand them as too stupid to have a seat in the legislature, because something as important as an override of a veto, you should have decided well before the roll call began. You should have decided well before the session began.
Especially if it's the second vote on the override.
Yeah.
It's not the first time.
Yeah. So, if you haven't figured it out until the roll call starts, you should find something else to do. You should not be in the legislature. Now, the smart money over there is saying, oh, she knew exactly what she wanted to do. She just wanted to show off. She wanted to send a message. Well, maybe so, but I'm going to take her not at her word, but the way she appears. She appears to be too dense to have figured out what she wants to do. She's got to take that last few seconds. Oh gosh, it's my turn to vote now. Should I vote for the override, or should I vote against it? I got to think about this. I pass.
Maybe she was playing Angry Birds.
Yeah, and of course, by the time it got around to her the second time, she knew that only 8 had voted for the override, so it wasn't even, this strategic, this kind of blackjack counting cards type of drill. Just some kind of a display of something. I'm going to call it a display of ignorance. And every time anybody does this in the future, I'm going to take you literally, that you are too dumb to figure out how you wanted to vote until your name was called in the roll call, and called 3 times. It took her 3 times to figure it out. So this is, what? Why are you in the legislature if that's the way you're going to behave?
I'll even say, why are you in the legislature if you keep giving sole executive power to another branch of government?
Well, true enough, but it's kind of like Paul Zerzan and systemic racism. If you can't handle the really little ones, how are you going to handle the big ones that are actually important?
I'm going to do another take. We can't handle a health emergency as legislatures. We're that impotent, so we're going to give it to somebody else.
Yeah, we don't want, we know it's a serious problem, and we just don't want to get involved. We'll let the governor do it, and if we don't like it, maybe we'll ask Jim to write her a letter.
Okay, we'll make that happen in 2022.
Exactly. So Rhea went into this morning, and he had Chris Duenas on the air and said, when this happened, you've got the Bob and Ray resolution. All you have 8 votes. All it takes is 8 votes to pass the Bob and Ray resolution, and it's over. So what's holding you up? And Chris had some, he had an explanation or two, but if you don't have the guts to go forward with the Bob and Ray resolution, then maybe you should just let Bill 11 rest. Because if you don't have the intestinal fortitude to come out there and make a hard decision, and I don't know really if it's that hard, I think it would be the popular decision. I think I'm probably as typical as most of the folks on the island are just sick of this emergency stuff. And how could it still be an emergency after all this time? You know, we keep talking about, well, we have to take these these extreme measures so that we don't overflow the hospital. You know, we had to lighten the load on the. Well, that's long over.
What did Dr. Akamoto said yesterday morning? The hospitals are full, not with COVID patients, but with flu patients, regular flu patients.
Yeah.
Because it's always going to happen that way.
Yeah, and then you know, well, if we have to keep doing this till we get a vaccine. Well, we got a vaccine. We have to do this until we get up to the herd immunity point. We're at the herd immunity point, and people are still supposed to be wearing these idiotic masks that don't help anything. We've got these rules about how many people can go into a restaurant and on and on and on. I've talked before about how coercive this whole one vaccination in order to get into a restaurant is. So it's time, you guys down there, it's time to do this. Override the veto on Bill 11, pass the Bob and Ray resolution, do something. So it appears to be the concept of learned helplessness. And I've talked about this before also, learned helplessness, where they've done experiments with animals where an animal, if he is put in a situation where he goes for some meat and he gets a shock a couple of times, he just gives up. He has learned to be helpless. And that seems to be what's going on here with our minority. They've learned to be helpless. They don't have the votes. They've got 7 votes, 7 votes in the speaker. And it kind of reminds me of the chat that Ray and I had on the phone with Tello when we explained the Bob and Ray resolution to her. It took, a half an hour or something like that? To tell her exactly where it came from, what it was about, etc. This was after she and Mary Torres became very angry because when I drafted up the bill, on the draft bill, I put the names of the 7 Republicans as sponsors. Common sense, it seemed to me.
The very next day after you talked to her about it, it's like, I don't remember talking to him about it.
They didn't have my permission.
Yeah, I don't recall having a conversation.
Yeah. They didn't have, and Mary Torres was really in a snit. How dare you, right? So that's where we are. I got Brian Chargaloff, I think, is one of the DOE 3, right? Yeah. Good afternoon, Brian.
Hi, Your Honor. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
All right, because I'm going down south and drop out. But yeah, just wanted to call in about the. I don't even know what to call it. What happened yesterday? The attempt to do something good for the people of Guam. So yeah, I was just I'm disgusted, and I heard Chris's response, and I understand, but like you said, the time is now. The gloves have to come off. We're going to be going into 3 years of this so-called emergency. We're basically open. They're going to have graduation ceremonies at the field house, and we're still in a public health emergency. So I don't understand what's going on here anymore.
I think the rule is if it's something that we like, that we see as benefiting us, it's not so emergent. But if it's a place where we can exercise our power on things that we aren't that interested in, it's still an emergency.
So yeah, I asked Ray about the resolution and why don't we just do it? But I remember Senator Bloss said something that it was like either the time expired to do the resolution or it's a little outdated. I wasn't sure what Senator Bloss was talking about when I met with him about a month ago.
Well, maybe Senator Bloss wasn't sure what he was talking about either, because the resolution was drafted for the last legislature. So you'd have to. It would be a little bit of a typing exercise to change it to this legislature. I don't think that would be too hard.
Oh, okay. So, as far as I was told, the speaker told me that any senator can call the emergency session, which I believe is true. So I guess now we're just waiting for someone to, like Ray called it and Chris called it in the morning, have the coconuts to follow through.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm afraid we're going to have a long wait. And the answer to that is that come next November, some of them are going to have a long wait too. We turned the rascals out once before.
Yeah.
When the WANPAT 10 marched in and gave themselves huge retroactive raises, 7 senators went from senator to civilian in one election.
Yeah, I remember. I don't know. I'm just going to have to leave it up to your experience and expertise to help me understand what to do next here while I wait to go back to the classroom.
Yeah, well, have you consulted with counsel, Ed? That would be my advice.
From what I'm gathering, it seems like the legal folks here on Guam don't want to tackle this issue because it's basically not a win-win for everyone. I don't know. That's just what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
They're saying it's better we go through the legislature.
Well, lawyers, seldom speak with a single voice. That may be what some lawyers would say, but I can't imagine that no lawyer wouldn't want to take this on.
That's why we're surprised, Your Honor. Where all our lawyers?
Have you shopped for lawyers at all?
Only as a group, and we came across one. I don't know if I can say her name, but she said she's willing to help us, but it seems the best bet now would be to go and attempt a veto override or the Bob and Ray resolution.
Well, you can tell me her name.
On air or?
Of course.
Okay. I believe it's Rachel Ajuju.
Okay. Well, then you got somebody who's saying that, but that's one lawyer.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're back to coconuts again, aren't we?
Yes, we are. And
Azuzu.
I'm not going to. I won't talk about my size, but yeah.
Yeah, Azuzu. That says
Yeah.
I'm making a play on words here. Yeah, but I suspect that there is some aggressive lawyer out there that would be. Maybe you can try the guy that I'm going to talk about on the card here. A guy named Brad Hussman, who is plowing some new ground. He might be somebody that would try something like this, but. I would be very surprised if every lawyer thinks that this is not a job for lawyers. This is something for the legislature. Very surprised.
I think my opinion, and a lot of people are sharing, is this: everyone's just intimidated by the governor to challenge her.
Yeah, she just scares the hell out of me. I can tell you that.
It doesn't have anything to do with the fact that her husband's a lawyer, would it, Your Honor?
I don't think so. I really don't. I suspect he probably wouldn't. His firm might not want to take the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that would be my advice. And if you can go to the Bar Association website, and there is a list of every lawyer, every member of the bar with contact information. And there's even a page that'll tell you what lawyers specialize in what. I don't think there's a category called tail twisting, but, a few phone calls might get you somewhere, Brian. That would be the best advice I can give you.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Your Honor.
Okay, good talking to you, Brian. Good luck.
Good talking to you. All right, thank you.
Before we go to break, Bob, on the question of the resolution, there was also somebody saying that it needs a public hearing. Is that true or not?
Well, the standing rules say that a substantive resolution needs a public hearing.
Substantive.
Substantive.
Okay.
Yeah, a resolution commending Tun Sus Macaca
No substance.
for butchering his pig doesn't need a public hearing.
Now, what about it needs to go through committee first?
Well, committees hold the hearings.
Oh, okay. So what would be the right committee that goes through it?
Speaking off the top of my head, I think there's something that has the words governmental operations in it.
Trying to find out who heads that committee.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But that would be a plus. Having a public hearing would be a plus. And having it go to a committee would be a plus. Anything is better than where we are right now. You know, the law of inertia, a body at rest tends to stay at rest. So until you get it moving, it's going to tend to stay at rest, which is exactly where it is right now. Okay, let's take a short break, and I'm going to come back and chat with Kellis for a minute about 7 senators.
Try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktat, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Is that Back Home Again in Indiana? I love that song. You know why I like it so much?
Why do you like it so much, Bob?
Because I've been to some really exotic places in my lifetime.
And those would be?
Well, I've been to India. I've been to Indonesia.
Exotic.
I've even been to Indiana. Pretty exotic. Okay, Kellis, what can you tell me about 7 senators?
No, I was going to ask you, Judge. I know that the 7 were booted, but didn't they very quickly get, or if not all of them, but some of them were picked up for like directorships and stuff like that?
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
Because, I mean, and then don't we have it, I think there's 2 of them that are now senators again?
Yeah, both Frank Blas, actually 3, Frank Blas, Tony Atta, and Chris Duenas. Now, I'm counting not only the WANPAT 10, who were the actors, but Frank Blas, who wasn't in the legislature at that time, but when it came time to repeal the $85,000 salary increase, did his best to see that it didn't happen. So I count him in that group.
But, you know, it's like, I'm just saying that the voters of Guam have some of the shortest memories known to man, because they just see a name that's like, oh, yeah, I remember this person. So, but, you know, it's like, I mean, did we never get with, like, the, you know, like the governance of like that? It's like, wait, we just voted these people out, and then you're making them directors of, you know, such and such and such and such. That's where I'm like going, Gov Guam, basically, once you're in Gov Guam, it's like, you know, when the Air Force, they say, you know, once you get Minot, you'll stay in Minot forever. You know, there's certain, you know, things that once you get it, you're there. and you can't get out. So it's like if you're an employee of GovGuam, it'll take an act of God, but then I think God can be overridden to be fired. At least when you go to the Civil Service Commission, you'll eventually get your job back and back pay. So I'm just saying that's one of the sad things about GovGuam, that you can't fire anyone, for cause unless you pay them, almost $1 million.
Yeah, it is sad. And yesterday, Pete Santos and I talked about meritocracy and what Pete labeled as the Chamorro culture, and how the two are at cross purposes, one with the other. And I think perhaps that has something to do with what you're talking about. I analyze it like this. Until we have a part-time legislature, people are going to see service in the legislature as a job. And people are going to see having the proper connections and being in the government of Guam club, as a source of wealth rather than an occupation. So the way to break it and take the whole thing back towards a meritocracy, in my estimation, is we got to have a part-time legislature.
Yeah, I'm for it. We should run in and then run again, and then put in the bill. Well,
yeah, that's a thought. But, I had self-imposed term limits when I ran. When I ran, I did not want to become a candidate for the We Become What We Hate award, which is awarded to folks who will condone in themselves what they condemn in others. So I made up my mind at the beginning, 2 or 3 terms, no matter what, I'm out. And that's the way I did it.
Well, I thank you for your service, but more for your service as a jarhead, and your service as a judge, and then your service you're doing right now on the point. I think you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you very much, Kellis. I'm glad you called today.
Okay, you too. Bye.
Yeah, I could sit around and listen to stories like that all day long. Okay, let me just check and see who's on Facebook here right now. Johnny Utah says, the judge is right. The blue-green test. My experience on Guam showed me that it's a monarchist system hiding as a democracy.
It's a shared monarchy.
Yeah, well, going back to what Kellis said, we have, you'd almost think that political offices on Guam are inherited, that they run in the family. His dad used to be a senator. I'm going to vote for him, or her father was governor, or on and on and on. And what Mark Forbes used to call legacy candidates. And being a legacy candidate is a real advantage, because part of it is it lets people know, it separates you from the crowd. It doesn't distinguish you from the crowd. It just separates you from the crowd. And according to Forbes, people would rather vote for people they don't like than people they don't know. So nowadays, where you can't really make much of an dent on the electorate by retail campaigning, going out and knocking on doors and things like, you can't knock on enough doors to make a difference. Any kind of cheap name recognition is a plus.
And you did that on your campaign, from what I understand.
Knock on doors?
Passing out cards.
I passed out cards. Yeah, I did that. Yeah, I had an on-motorcade.
Thank God.
Yeah. All right, let's break for the big halftime show, and we'll come back to Guam XREL John Ryan versus Permich.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The
Potentially deadly winds. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The northern plains and parts of the Midwest under high wind warnings.
The highest potential, Omaha, Des Moines, Ames, moving into Mason City and Rochester, Minnesota, specifically northern portions of Iowa and southeast portions of Minnesota. A lot of this lasting through tonight.
That's Fox meteorologist Britta Merwin at Fox Weather. The National Weather Service in Chicago warning winds overnight are forecast to gust as high as 65 miles an hour, and they pose a threat to life and property. Tornadoes reported Wednesday in Minnesota, Nebraska, Kansas, and Iowa. Northwest of Des Moines in Greene County, Iowa, the sheriff says buildings have been flattened. Destruction almost beyond belief is how President Biden describes what he saw in western Kentucky on Wednesday in Dawson Springs, promising residents whatever help they need.
4 FEMA search and rescue teams are working here in Kentucky right now. For those without power, FEMA's already provided 61 generators. The Army Corps of Engineers has a temporary power install teams ready to assist if needed. And we provided critical supplies thus far, and a lot more to come.
The number of people in Kentucky killed by the storm has been revised downward to 71, and the list of those unaccounted for is also smaller. Officially, congressional Democrats say they are still optimistic they can pass the president's big social spending plan before their Christmas recess.
But those hopes are dimming. Unresolved issues linger on immigration, taxes, and health care. Republicans oppose the bill, but it hinges on a solitary Democratic senator. Joe Manchin talked with President Biden multiple times this week. Manchin worries the bill could fuel inflation. Manchin is elusive since the bill isn't done.
Fox's Chad Pergram at the Capitol. A new poll from Fox Business finds 47% of those responded believe the president's plan would make inflation worse. America is listening to Fox News.
Santa's come in and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 3.99% and up to $50,000. And with the new Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas Loan contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier this year. Equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
The holidays are here and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visit guam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
The Centers for Disease Control says the Omicron variant of the coronavirus is responsible for about 3% of the current COVID cases in the U.S. Researchers at Harvard say the number's probably higher than that because it's spreading so fast. The CDC says the best advice is still to get the vaccine or a booster shot. White House medical advisor Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Our booster vaccine regimens work against Omicron. At this point, there is no need for a variant-specific booster.
The country's second largest school district is delaying its vaccine mandate.
The mandate for students in the Los Angeles Unified School District will now begin at the start of the next academic year in 2022. The previous plan required students 12 and up to have a second shot by next week. That could have meant some 30,000 students would have been forced into remote learning in January. Students under 12 years old are only encouraged, not required, to get COVID shots. With the mandate pushed back, all students, no matter their vaccination status, must get COVID tests weekly until February, when that will only be required of unvaccinated kids. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Another highly successful college football coach has flamed out quickly in the NFL.
The Jacksonville Jaguars firing head coach Urban Meyer in the overnight hours Thursday after a 2-11 run. Jags owner Shad Khan issuing a statement, quote, after deliberation over many weeks and a thorough analysis of the entirety of Urban's tenure with our team, I am bitterly disappointed to arrive at the conclusion that an immediate change is imperative for everyone. Meyer's tenure with the Jags was mired in controversy, all coming to a head on Wednesday with a Tampa Bay Times report in which former Jacksonville kicker Josh Lambo alleged that Meyer kicked him during a preseason practice. Offensive coordinator Darrell Bevel will serve as interim head coach for the Jaguars. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
As we celebrate this holiday season, we reflect on the hardships of the past 2 years and remain grateful for the family and friends who share our journey and lighten our burdens. The team at Security Title is proud of the work we do to support ourselves and our families, to serve and care for our customers, and to give back to our community. May this season of joy and the new year bring happiness, good health, and prosperity to you and yours. Merry Christmas from all of us at Security Title.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Probably the greatest halftime show put on between the halves of any football game anywhere west of the Mississippi. I'm willing to bet on it. Maybe even east of the Mississippi also.
You would probably win.
Yeah, probably would. So here we are back for the second half of Tall Tales this Thursday afternoon. Next item on the card is called Territory of Guam, ex-Rel John Ryan versus Permarch Inc. Permarch Guam Inc. And let's get the Law and Order notebooks out, Jose. You remember yesterday I talked about Michael San Nicolas and Miguel San Nicolas and the Gura suit, where Michael and Miguel said that Gura can't be the plaintiff in a false claim suit because only a person can be a plaintiff in that suit. And you recall that prompted a caller to call in and say and repeat at least once that San Nicolas is trying to get out from under. We had a nice chat about that, but Pete Santos told us that actually he was speaking to the public, not to the courts. But it's a similar kind of suit, but this time instead of a government agency being the relator, it's John Ryan, a name that probably is fairly well known on the island. John Ryan's been in the media. I don't know where he is right now, but he's been in the media over the years. So the caption, Territory of Guam, ex-Rel John Ryan versus Permarch. The ex-Rel stands for ex-relatione, and it translates to English, on the relation of. So it means that John Ryan is the guy that filed suit on the false claim, in the name of the territory of Guam. And just like the suit against San Nicolas, the Attorney General has the ability to join in the suit, and if he does, he can say, good going, John, I'm going to take over. But John still gets a piece of the action once the Attorney General recovers. So it's one of those kinds of suits. If you ever wondered what the words ex rel means in the caption of a case, now you know. So it's one of those kinds of cases. Per March, John Ryan suing in the name of the territory of Guam against a company called Per March Inc. And I have papers on a motion for partial summary judgment that counsel for John Ryan filed. And as per what I told Brian Chargaloff, the lawyer that's handling this case for John Ryan is Braddock J. Brad Huseman. And his phone number is 989-5050. And I'll repeat that again at the end of this part of the card. So he is apparently willing to take on novel cases that haven't been tried before. Good for him. And I wouldn't know if he'd be interested in getting involved in any of these three the government of Guam employees who've been locked out, but old saying, I don't know how to say it in Latin, but an old lawyer saying there's no harm in asking. So reading from the papers in that motion for partial summary judgment, this is a simple case about a wholesaler, Per March, whose business plan for generating profit involved merely an illegitimate tax avoidance scheme. That's a good way to make a profit. Per March illegally avoided paying taxes on the alcohol products it sold. It did this by selling alcohol at below tax value, or the amount of money the government of Guam requires wholesalers to collect on each bottle of alcohol they sell to retailers. So it's a form of price control. You have to sell for the amount set by the government so that there's enough to cover your alcohol tax. And that price is called tax value. The complaint in this case alleged that supported by Per March's own receipts that Per March sold bottles of alcohol to retailers for a price that is below the tax value of those bottles. Discovery confirmed these allegations. Discovery, remember I've explained requests for admissions, interrogatories, and requests for production of documents before that's part of a civil case. Per March's own discovery shows that it not only failed to file the appropriate tax forms with the government of Guam, but it also has no evidence of making any tax payments. Moreover, when Per March learned about this suit, the evidence shows that it raised its prices, but it still has no evidence of payments to the government of Guam. Additionally, Per March's customers, Per March's shippers, and Per March itself establishes that Per March sells cases of alcohol below or at slightly above the tax value. As such, it's impossible for Per March to stay in business and to pay taxes from the proceeds it receives from its sales when it's selling those bottles of alcohol for less than or close to their tax value. Now, I don't know how John Ryan got involved in this, but I suspect that every alcohol wholesaler that does pay his taxes is sitting back there saying, "Let's go, John Ryan." Because Per March failed to file the appropriate tax forms or pay taxes owed, summary judgment as to liability is necessary and proper at this time. And then here's the facts. Guam law on the taxation on alcohol is straightforward. An excise tax is imposed upon all alcoholic beverages. except alcoholic beverages manufactured in Guam. Sold in Guam by manufacturer's agents, rectifiers, or wholesalers. Per-March is a wholesaler, and Per-March must account for and pay tax on its wholesale alcohol imports monthly by filing a GRT-3 form on or before the 20th day of the month following the close of the calendar month in which the taxes accrue. The law presumes that alcohol imported by Per-March is taxable. For distilled spirits, like the kind Per-March imports, the tax is $18 per gallon. Per-March, however, must pay tax on each bottle of alcohol sold. All alcoholic beverages sold on Guam are subject to an excise tax set out by liquid volume per bottle, and the sale of tax-free liquor is prohibited. Transportation, importation, or use in Guam of alcoholic beverages without payment of the excise tax is prohibited. Further, to make sure that alcohol sellers do not subvert the tax regime and flood the market with low-cost alcohol via creative schemes, it's illegal for a business such as Per-March to sell alcohol that involves free goods or secret rebates. So that's what the case is about. Per-March. So if you're listening out there and you find that the government, somebody in the government is not doing what it should be doing, and because of that, somebody's getting away with something like this, you could go and find Brad Hoosman and file a key, these are called qui-tam suits, Q-U-I-T-A-M. Because when Brad recovers for John Ryan is going to get a percentage of the taxes recovered from Per-March. That's the incentive. It's another one of those laws where the public is an enforcement arm.
And you don't even have to be connected to the case at all.
No,
just
you
bring
don't.
it up.
Not at all. You don't. Standing is automatic. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's Brad Huseman that I mentioned. So if you have something that looks like this, go see Brad. Now, there's an interesting defense here that Per-March mounts, and here's how it goes. Since about 2011, Per-March, a wholesaler, began selling alcohol products. It has been selling alcohol products for approximately 10 years. When Per-March began selling alcohol, one of its principals, Mr. Victor Chargaloff, I hope it's not the cousin of Brian. Victor Chargaloff proceeded to the Business Privilege Tax Branch at the Department of Revenue and Taxation to inquire about the applicable taxes. Ms. Bernie, B-E-R-N-I-E, that's apparently her surname, Bernie, at the Business Privilege Tax Branch, and May Linda Bayona had advised Mr. Chargaloff numerous times that as a wholesaler, Per-March was not required to pay alcohol taxes. Mr. Chargaloff was further told the retailer is responsible for the taxes. Since then, Per-March has been selling alcohol without paying any excise taxes. This looks like judgment on the pleadings time. You got a confession here in the court purpose. Yeah, we did it. But, we got a really good excuse because we asked somebody over at Rev Tax and they said we didn't have to pay. Now, this is a legitimate argument. It's not going to work. But here's the argument. The relator, that is John Ryan, is stopped from pursuing this matter as a result of government conduct. A party asserting estoppel against a government entity must establish 4 elements. First, there must be wrongful conduct on the part of the government agency. Second, The party seeking equitable relief must reasonably rely on the wrongful conduct. Third, the party must incur a unique expenditure in reliance on the wrongful conduct. Finally, the balance of equities must weigh in favor of estoppel. Now, estoppel is one of those, fancy Latin terms that it's not easy to define. It's easy to show an example, but you would translate estoppel like this: a person, when estoppel is invoked, a party will not be heard to deny the representation that he made earlier. As an example, if I were to enter into a deal with someone and say, well, I am incorporated, and it turns out that that's an important element of liability, I can't later on say, I could say I'm not incorporated, but I'm going to be estopped to deny my status. That's how estoppel works. You look puzzled, Jose. Once party making a representation that's reasonably relied upon by another party, first party cannot say, no, that's not true. I was just pulling your leg, or beep, beep, or something like that. Yeah, that's how estoppel works. Now, estoppel against the government is really, really hard to come by, as it should be. Because if estoppel were against the government were easy to find, you could find some clerk somewhere who could bind the government to outrageous things that would be to the disadvantage of the government and therefore to the disadvantage of the people. So when I read this, I said, you can't go to the Department of Revenue and Taxation and ask somebody at the window for advice, and then by relying on that advice say the government is stopped from denying what that clerk said. It just doesn't work that way. So according to Permark's own statement, first there must be wrongful conduct on the part of the authorized government agent. Well, first of all, are Miss Burney and May Linda Bayona authorized government agencies authorized to provide public information, or do they hand out forms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Because it's a general principle that's how it works. So if they are authorized informations, are they engaged in wrongful conduct? One would not think so. Being on the job, giving advice to customers, it's a mistake, but it's not wrongful. Second, the party seeking equitable relief must reasonably rely on the wrongful conduct. Well, the conduct's not wrongful, and I think it takes a special kind of mindset to go to any government agency and ask an employee who's at the public window level for advice that you're going to rely on. Third, the party must incur a unique expenditure in reliance on the wrongful conduct. Well, Permark's didn't incur any expenditure whatsoever, unless you would say that having to pay the taxes when you get caught is a unique expenditure. Finally, the balance of the equities must weigh in favor of estoppel. The balance of the equities. This is esoteric. But in the American justice system on the civil side, we have law and we have equity. And once upon a time, we had separate courts. We had courts of law, we had a court of law and a chancellor in equity. And equity, the explanation is that equity is engaged more in not in so much in applying black letter law to a situation, but looking for fairness. Yeah, strange. So injunctions, as an example, are a product of the equity jurisdiction of a court. Yeah. So when you balance the equities, you look at the equities on each side. What equities does the relator have? Well, the relator, number one, is trying to enforce a tax law. And two, if the relator is successful in enforcing the tax law, the public benefits because money flows into the treasury. If the relator is successful, it sends a message to other scofflaws, you better not try to skip out on your taxes because some guy like John Ryan is going to come along and file a qui tam suit against you. Now, I don't see anything negative on the side of John Ryan. If you look to balance the equities, when you look at per march, if per march had to pay the taxes that John Ryan says they owe, how were they hurt? They're just doing what they were supposed to do in the first place.
We would have got away with it if it wasn't for those meddling kids. Right?
Exactly. So even if the other elements of estoppel are there, the equities don't balance in favor of per march. Everybody's supposed to pay their taxes. So a very interesting case, and I want to give a big hand to Brad Huseman. And another big hand to John Ryan, the relator in this case. Sounds like you like the client better than the lawyer, Jose.
He did the hard work.
The client
initially.
did. Yeah. All right. Well, he did what needed to be done, and he did what's so difficult to get people to do around here, and that is you see something wrong, you don't, and Colin Clark mentioned it on Facebook today. You see something wrong and you don't subscribe to the doctrine of sota prim, which means let it go. Yeah. Which it just happens way, way too often. And people who try to get away with things know that nobody is going to blow the whistle on them. So good on John Ryan for blowing that whistle. And all you tailgaters out there, get your whistles on it. Get your whistle out and go outside and give it a good toot so you remember how to do it. And if you see something wrong, just put the sota prim away until your next village fiesta and do what Brad did. And if you can, pass it along to the Republicans in the legislature. Okay, so that's that item on the card. Next, I've got pro-aborts versus unborn children. But let's go to Wrigley Field for the seventh inning stretch before we get into that.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
The holidays are here, and you know what that means. Time to gather with family and friends, dress up our homes, and explore Christmas season in paradise. Why not share these moments for a chance to win $100 in cash? Log on to visitguam.com/Instagram today to participate in the Guam Visitors Bureau #Instagram photo and video contest. A winner will be chosen every week, so share your best holiday moments now and win. Brought to you by GVB, making Guam a better place to live, work, and visit.
Portions of the program brought to you by Nissan. Choose your favorite Nissan, and there's an abundance of Nissan automobiles to choose from. Rogues, Rogue Sports, Muranos, Kicks, Sentras, Leafs, Rogues, and then start talking about the deal they want to put together for you. Enjoy 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on them. Just sign and drive away. Inventory limited, so don't wait. See Nissan Guam first. Wait, there's the fine print. I got to read the thing in fine print ease. On approved credit, 3 payments calculated, 5% APR, 60 months term, and base based on the actual selling price of the vehicle only, not including down payment or any aftermarket products or accessories. See Nissan Guam for full details.
Okay, so here we are at Wrigley Field for the 7th inning stretch. Wrigley Field in Chicago is a beautiful ballpark. That means we got just 2 innings left here at Tall Tales this afternoon. Johnny Utah posted something. He said that, let's see, Utah has the strictest laws. There are state liquor stores. And I've had some familiarity with that. My wife went to school in Utah, and I went to visit her a couple of times. Did the weekend in Salt Lake City, and bars and taverns can serve beer. And as I recall, where we were staying, there was a bar, and then there was a state liquor store in the hotel. So you go in and buy a bottle of liquor, and the bar would charge you for setups, for a glass, ice, Coca-Cola, whatever you wanted to mix.
Like a corkage fee.
Yeah, right. And then they had private clubs, which I thought would not be a cool system at all. But there was a private club in Salt Lake City called the Manhattan Club. And the only way you could get into a private club would be if a member sponsored you. Well, the desk clerk at the hotel we stayed at was a member and would freely sponsor you in. So every time that we went to the Manhattan Club. It was beautiful. It was a great club, good food, nice crowd, good music, reasonably priced, etc. We should be so lucky to have something like that here. So I saw one situation where perhaps gross government involvement worked out to my liking. It doesn't happen very often. That's Utah. Okay, next item on the card, pro-aborts versus unbearable children. This is from a guy named Christopher Bedford on the Federalist, which is a good website. It's been 2 weeks since the Supreme Court of the U.S. heard the oral arguments for Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health, the seminal case that could finally see a change to our country's half-century abortion regime. A regime among the most barbaric on the entire planet. It's always cryptic, trying to read too far into oral arguments. Everything seemed to go well. Justice Brett Kavanaugh, a worry to many pro-lifers, seemed deeply skeptical of the left's arguments. Chief Justice John Roberts, always the cautious liberal, correctly compared America's abortion laws to those of China and North Korea. By the end of the afternoon, folks from NBC's News legal correspondent Pete King, all the way back to our own Molly Hemingway, figured the old days were dead on arrival. But things change. In March of 2012, the court heard 3 days of arguments in a case called National Federation of Independent Business versus Sebelius, the first major case on the constitutionality of Obamacare. During those 6 hours of arguments, Roberts was engaged, fired up even. The Affordable Care Act looked to be in trouble. 3 months later, Roberts twisted the Senate's own words and promises to write a tortured majority opinion upholding President Barack Obama's signature achievement on absurd legal grounds. And they were absurd. The case came before the court, and the challenge brought by the plaintiffs, the National Federation of Independent Business, was that the national government did not have the authority to get into that kind of price regulation under the Commerce Clause, which is kind of the catch-all that everybody uses, government agencies use, or Congress uses since Wickard versus Filburn, to engage in all kinds of stuff that they shouldn't be doing. During the debate on the bill, and even President Obama himself assured everybody the mandate is a penalty. It's not a tax. There's no tax here. If you don't sign up for health care, you have to pay a penalty, but it's not a tax. Well, the 4 conservative justices said this bill, the Congress does not have the authority to pass this bill under the Commerce Clause. The other 4 justices found some way to say that it could pass, and Roberts stepped into the nearest telephone booth, came out dressed as a liberal.
Quick change, Roberts.
And said, well, you know, the Obamacare is okay because that individual mandate is actually a tax, and there's no limit on Congress's taxing power. Yeah, just amazing. And you know, Fox News was fooled when the results were read. You know, someone read the decision. Fox News jumped on the violation of the Commerce Clause and said Obamacare overruled. He didn't listen long enough to get down to Roberts and the tax. So it just goes to show you that there's always a crapshoot when you start talking about the courts, and why I rant and rave occasionally about critarchy, government by judges. Okay, according to the court reporting at the time, Roberts was originally part of the majority to strike Obamacare. The opinions were being written. They were debating follow-up questions like whether the individual mandate would be separated or if the whole law would come down. But then Roberts balked, and despite a month-long effort by Justice Anthony Kennedy to make him flip back, he stayed in President Obama's corner. Weird, right? But what could have changed so much in Roberts' mind during those 3 months? There are a lot of possible answers to that question, which is why it's so notoriously difficult to read into arguments. Maybe his liberal colleagues swayed him. Maybe he came to a different conclusion after a particularly lucid daydream. The most likely answer, however, based on everything we know about Roberts and what drives him, what he cares about, was media coverage. Some justices, like Clarence Thomas, avoid even reading press coverage of the court, so they can't be influenced by it, even subconsciously. Roberts is not one of those justices. He is a man who cares deeply about how he is perceived, meaning he cares deeply about how he is portrayed. And for those 2 spring months in 2012, the corporate media echo chamber was united and resounding. The court, they said, can only be seen as legitimate if it contorts itself to do what we want it to do. And they keep saying that, don't they, Jose? In the New York Times, an op-ed by Duke law professor Paul Carrington said that if the court dares to toss out the individual mandate, Congress should retaliate by imposing term limits on the remaining justices. Many other articles suggested similar tactics. If the court wouldn't uphold the Democrat agenda, then the court was obsolete. Even the president chimed in. It was an obvious triumph of popularity over justice. The ultimate vindication of high school mean girl rules. But surely our corporate press has maintained objectivity and decorum over this past week, right? Well, let's take a look. After last week's oral arguments, CNN legal analyst and would-be abortion facilitator Jeffrey Toobin, this guy is really tough on on Zoom. I'll tell you that.
Don't be jerking us around, Bob.
Hey, guys, Jeffrey Tubman's on Zoom. I never watch pornography. Yeah, Jeffrey Tubman called today a real blow against the Supreme Court's institutional reputation. Terry Moran, the senior national correspondent at ABC, went on Good Morning American to call Justice Kavanaugh's line of questioning ominous. There's no legal argument here, CNN's John King insisted, claiming we will see what will ultimately be interpreted as a political decision. MSNBC Nicole Wallace used the word stench 7 times to refer to the possibility of striking down abortion. I have a special contempt for Nicole Wallace. She and Steve Schmidt were the two prime movers in John McCain's campaign. And I'm not going to go into details here, but as part of that, Nicole Wallace threw the lieutenant governor candidate under the bus. What was her name again? Sarah
Palin.
Yeah, Sarah Palin. She threw Sarah Palin under the bus, but it worked out well for her because she got picked up by PMSNBC. And now she's a never Trumper, a rabid Democrat, etc. She just sold out. She's just an opportunist and nothing more. So when the movie about Sarah Palin came out, the two people that looked really good in the movie were Steve Schmidt and Nicole Wallace. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, yeah. The New York Times, yeah, because they were whispering in the ears, giving away all of the secrets of the McCain campaign, etc.
They're the heroes.
Yep. The New York Times published what Senator Republican Josh Hawley called an unhinged rant in favor of abortion by Linda Greenhouse, a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist who for 3 decades had covered the Supreme Court for surprise, the New York Times. Yeah. Fake war hero Brian Williams hosted a panel where he accused the Democrats of being cowards who weren't willing to destroy the validity of the Supreme Court to save national abortion. Wow, he asked the panel, thinks that a party that was clowned into putting Kavanaugh and Barrett on the court that still acts as if McConnell is in charge of the filibuster is going to gather the votes, the guts, and the ability to somehow pack or alter in any way the Supreme Court? This is Brian Williams, war hero. CNN, Anderson Cooper, another one of my favorites.
You say Brian Williams, the war hero?
Yeah. CNN, Anderson Cooper put on his super serious intellectual glasses to talk to Democrat Senator Chris Murphy about how Republicans are hypocritical to oppose abortion while not wanting to ban all guns. Boy, that is the depth of hypocrisy. MSNBC's Alicia Menendez brought on a Black Lives Matter activist to talk about her very important tweet that the roots of the pro-life movement are about preserving segregation and building a white supremacist religious right.
Yeah, let's talk about Margaret Sanger.
Oh, yeah. I want to talk about Margaret. They finally distanced themselves from Margaret. CNN wasn't about to be left out of the racism game either. Host John Berman introduced the subject as one that could fundamentally alter life and choice for millions of women, before tossing to assistant law professor and CBS Law contributor Alexis Hogue, who called federalism terrifying and compared opposing Roe versus Wade to being pro-slavery.
What?
Yeah. Here's one of my favorites. MSNBC's Joy Reid. Yeah. Joy, you know what Joy Reid's middle name is?
Wingnut?
Can't.
Oh, can't.
Yeah, Joy Can't Reid said a decision to roll back our abortion laws would turn all women into secondary constitutional citizens and force them to leave the babies on the doorstep of the firehouse. It hurt her as a black woman and a sister, she continued, to see Justice Clarence Thomas on the bench comparing banning abortion to state-sponsored enslavement. Pregnancy, she insisted, can actually be dangerous to a woman's health, especially when you live in a country like the United States. This is Joy Reid.
It's incredible how they just, again, reality narrative.
Uh-huh.
The minority population, the African American population, is smaller than whites, right?
Mhm.
Demographically. But they have the highest rate of abortions in the United States, especially New York City.
And Planned Parenthood builds most of their shops in
Urban areas. Yeah.
black neighborhoods, yeah. Human doughball Ellie Mistel agreed wholeheartedly, insisting that a fetus is not deserving of full personhood rights and that Christians are only concerned about the right of the fetus when that right can be used to diminish the rights of women. Christians, yeah.
You know who else decided that babies that were born despite an abortion were not deserving of personhood rights? That was our own governor. When she was a private citizen, she publicly testified against the Born Alive Act, which gratefully passed here on Guam.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm aware of that. I know about that, yeah. Yeah, Tim used to bring that up whenever the opportunity presented itself.
Always a good opportunity to do
Yeah,
that.
really. Yeah, I'm looking for something here I'm going to need here in just a second. Yeah, okay, so let's see. We got comb-over artist Chuck Todd, who's really jealous of Zema Ikotny, I can tell you that. Competed with them throwing an on-air pro-abortion tantrum that would satisfy the most cringeworthy of teenaged activists. You're worried about the liberty of the unvaccinated, he told Republican Senator Mike Brown. What about the liberty of the woman who doesn't want to carry a pregnancy to term? Why should the government force that you don't want the government to force people to get a vaccine? A moral equivalency, a vaccine and a murder. Not to be left out, supposed comedian Steve Colbert told his audience that since we might not be allowed to kill our children anymore in some states where voters choose it, then we no longer live in a democracy. I'm going to repeat that. I think Steve Colbert got it right. Since we might not be allowed to kill our children anymore in some states where voters choose it, then we no longer live in a democracy. Amazingly, his take was less demented than the supposed comedians of The View, another TV program. This is just some of the coverage we've seen in less than 2 weeks since the oral arguments were made. The case is far from lost, and there's no doubt panic is spreading fast through the Democrat ranks. But notice this, the left knows the fight is not over. They know they can still pull the win out. They've done it before, they can do it again. And this is a key and fundamental difference between the Democrat Party and the GOP. They don't stop. When was the last time you heard a Democrat politician say, hey guys, election's over, thanks for your help, everyone home, and we'll see you again in 2 years? You haven't heard that because they never said anything remotely like that. Instead, what you'll hear is, the election's over, but the fight has just begun. They count on their activists to come with them and help them in the political fights ahead. The Dobbs arguments were a long time coming. Many people fought their whole lives for that day. Too many who prayed and who loved and who gave it all gave it their all, never even lived to see it. We're lucky we did, but the fight's not over. We can't just go home and let the court decide what the court decides. There's a role for us now, and it's our newspapers and magazines and our letters to the editor, our town hall meetings, and it's our marches and our rallies and our prayers. On a sunny day 2 weeks ago, our politics in this country changed forever, no matter the outcome. But this is our moment, what we've been fighting for all these years, and we must seize it. Great editorial. Great story. And of course, whenever I get into this, I've got to read from Vanessa Williams. Here's attorney Vanessa Williams. It's impossible to separate our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives. Wow.
Do you want fries with that?
Yeah. Okay, so we got to head for Churchill Downs, and let me see who I'm going to talk to after that. I got Ron McNinch and Drive-Thru Jack.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
So here we are at Churchill Downs. The next item on the card is Tall Tales versus Separatists. I probably won't get to it today. The other items took longer than what I had anticipated, so I'll put it first on the card tomorrow. In fact, maybe right after Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. So I got Ron McNinch, and then we're going to wind up at the drive-thru at McDonald's with Drive-Thru Jack. Good afternoon, Ron.
Hey, happy day, Senator. Happy day, Guam. Hey, you're talking about the U.S. Supreme Court and Justice Roberts and their opinions and things. Well, one of the key things I always like to point out is that quite often the justices don't really write their opinions. They just have these young 20-something-year-old clerks.
Quite often, Ron, means never.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So, I think that they rely quite a bit on their clerical staff or their judicial clerks to write their opinions, and so quite often I know quite often I say it again. Dang it. So I think that will sometimes translate into opinions that are off from the discussion that the judge enters into in the court hearing. And the Obamacare hearings were unusually long. Almost every Supreme Court hearing is 1 hour only, and it's less than 30 minutes per side. And so a 6-hour hearing is quite long. But anyway, that's my 2 cents worth.
Well, I'm going to refund your money, Ron, because although justices do have clerks, and judges have clerks, even our judges downtown have clerks, the judge decides which way the case is going to go and rides herd on the clerks and works them mercilessly, draft after draft. And although the clerk will be responsible for the, the word processing part of it, judges will get involved, justices will get involved with some particular kind of phrasing, et cetera. Did I ever send you the expose on Brown versus Board of Education?
I haven't read the one you're probably talking about, but I do know Earl Warren was quite the politician on the court.
Yeah, well, what happened in that case was one of Frankfurter's clerks, a guy named Ellman, went to work in the Justice Department in the Office of Legal Counsel, and Ellman and Frankfurter collaborated. Their collaboration should have gotten Ellman disbarred and Frankfurter impeached, but potentially both of them sent to jail, and that was the genesis of Brown versus Board of Education. So Frankfurter was in it up to his eyeballs.
Right.
So I'll send you that if I can remember.
Sure, I would like to read that. Thank you.
But
yeah, it's always fun talking about the courts on your show.
Yes, sir.
Have a great day.
Thank you, Ron. All right, here we go with Drive-Through Jack.
Good afternoon there, Bob. I'm cooking at home right now. Fish here.
Jack.
Oh, what is this world coming to, Bob?
Jack.
Just got
Jack.
notice from Ron that justices don't write their own opinions. What's next? Legislatures not
Jack.
writing their own laws and bills before they sign
Earth to Jack. Come on, Jack.
What's that?
Do you have your own talk show there?
Me? No, I'm cooking right now.
Oh, because it sounds like you've got your own, and I'm sitting here listening to your talk show. I kind of thought it was my talk show.
It's yours, man. It's 100% yours. I'm just along for the ride, for the drive-through.
All right.
But anyways,
well, start out.
Sure.
Start out by modulating your voice. And
I'm on speakerphone. I'm cooking and talking to you at the same time.
Start out by modulating your voice. Take a deep.
All right, sorry. I'm cooking and talking to you at the same time.
Take a deep breath and be listening, and try to avoid talking if you hear me talking.
Got it.
Can you still hear me when you're on speakerphone, Jack?
Loud and clear, 10 by 10.
All right. Now you may proceed.
All right, and you're speaking about the abortion issue. We must also admit that the fourth estate is complicit on what's happening. And so, if you remember when you were at the other radio station, PNC ran a story about an abandoned baby, and then said, and in a companion piece, it started to say the reason being or referring to it that there's a lack of an abortion.
Exactly. Yeah. It was the same story. It was like a cause and effect.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was an abandoned baby, and we don't have any abortionists on the island. So connect the dots.
Don't forget about what's her name? Flores, Jane Flores' article during the pandemic about her daughter being pregnant with a child in the womb. She's going across looking for an abortion doctor. But I wanted to get this, and it's very important. I think before the end of the year, we must come to the conclusion that we cannot vaccinate our way out of this scamdemic. There has to be a point that everybody knows at this point, that we cannot do that. So quit with it. There's been over 70 executive orders, through 20 and 21. Over 70.
You're absolutely right, Jack. Let's talk about that tomorrow, okay? Because you're absolutely right. Thanks. Okay, the end of another show here on Tall Tales. We'll see you tomorrow. Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Dangerous winds. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Wind gusts as high as 80 miles an hour in some places, blowing across the northern plains into the Great Lakes region overnight.
It's very bizarre out here. It'll be very, very calm, and then the next moment, you'll just get a huge gust of wind.
That's Anthony Ponce of Fox 32 in Chicago, where the National Weather Service warns the winds overnight pose a threat to life and property. Several tornadoes touched down in Nebraska, Kansas, and Minnesota, and in Iowa on Wednesday, where semi-trucks were blown over on Interstate 80. In northern Oklahoma, 21 cars of a freight train were blown off the tracks by the winds. The National Weather Service confirms the weekend tornado that ripped through western Kentucky was EF4 in strength. That scale only goes to 5. Winds clocked at 190 miles an hour. President Biden witnessed some of the destruction firsthand yesterday.
There's a lot of post-traumatic stress that comes from lying in your house and all of a sudden the roof goes blowing off and you wonder whether your kids are around. I really mean it. So, with the shock of losing a home and a business, the grief of losing someone, it's happening right before the holidays, I said, and we're going to make sure that you have all the help you need.
There are more bad polling numbers for the president.
In a new Fox Business poll, the president's approval rating remains underwater at 47%, despite improving 3% since November. Only 17% of registered voters say they've been helped by President Biden's economic policies. 63% say they're concerned about being able to pay their bills. And it's costing people. According to experts at Penn Wharton, inflation in 2021 will require the average U.S. household to spend around $3,500 more in 2021.
It's Fox's Peter Ducey at the White House. And the president's social spending plan appears to be in jeopardy, at least for the rest of this year. West Virginia Democrats Senator Joe Manchin still refusing to commit to voting yes. America is listening to Fox News.
Connect to Fox News Audio on the Fox News app. Listen to hear your favorite hosts like Brian Kilmeade, Jimmy Fallon, and Guy Benson standing up for what's right, live and via podcast. Just click listen, then swipe right and hear the latest news updates on your time. And scroll down to hear the latest podcasts from Fox News. And it's even easier to listen in the car with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Get programming alerts and notifications. Fox News Audio is on the Fox News app. The Voices America trusts. Download it now. From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
I'm Ben Domenech, publisher of The Federalist, and I'm inviting you to join a new conversation with the smartest thinkers out there about the country and where we're going. It's the Ben Domenech Podcast. You can subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify,